No, because I've wanted to do this ever since I did the movie. You know, if you go back and you check the interviews of when I made the movie and everybody said, oh, this is so wonderful. I said, well, it didn't turn out very well. It's only about 40% of what I want it to be. You know, I'm really disappointed in it. And every interview, relentlessly, right through the thing. And everybody said, what is he talking about? This guy's got to be crazy. And so obviously everybody who works with me has been hearing this for 20 years. As a matter of fact, I think they were relieved. Well, finally, he's going to do it. He's going to get it. We don't have to listen to this anymore. And, you know, the opportunity came along with the 20th anniversary celebration. I say, you know, there were a lot of ideas bandied about what we were going to do, because everybody, both at Fox and at Lucasfilm, said, we've got to do something. You know, this is, you know, this is an important thing to us. It's an important thing to a lot of our fans. We should celebrate the fact that we've been here for 20 years. And rather than do some of the other things that had been presented, everybody agreed that we would take the risk. And people think, oh yeah, just, hey, pop it out there, it's great. But reissuing a movie that's been on video and on television, a live action film, has never been done before. And especially not at this scale. So everybody's saying, should we do this, should we not do this? But when it came to doing it at that scale, I said, well, if we're going to put that much money in reissuing the movie, I want to get it right this time. So that was the thing that I said, well, because before, I mean, the idea of spending $5 million to noodle on a movie, you know, you can't do that unless there's some way that somebody who's put the $5 million in is going to say, well, all right, hopefully maybe we can get some of that money back. Filmmaking doesn't quite work like that. You try to make the movie that you write as a script, and along the way you have to make a large number of compromises. There's never enough time, never enough money. Some things just aren't possible. And so you have to rewrite, change, and in some cases cut things out that you'd planned to have in the movie. Those are always, you know, sometimes you cut things out because they don't belong in the movie because it was an idea that didn't work, and it just, the film works better if you cut them out. Sometimes, like in the case of the Jabba the Hutt scene, it was a scene that worked and could have been in the movie, but at the same time, at that point in history, ILM was coping with so much work, and it was a brand new company, and we were way behind schedule. To add that sequence, which was a stop motion sequence, which we hadn't done too much of at that time, just would have broken the back of the operation. We could never have finished the film. So I just cut it out of the movie because I figured that the plot part, which is the exposition, which is that Han had a price on his head and needed to be, that was his motivation, was handled in the Greedo scene, which is the scene before that. So plot-wise, in this particular movie, it wasn't essential that it be there. It was going to cost way too much money and take too much time to do it. And I figured, I didn't know whether I was ever going to get to make the other movies. So I figured if I didn't make the third movie, the idea of introducing Jabba the Hutt really wasn't that important, because if there never was a third movie, then it wasn't relevant, and it was a bigger idea. So I just figured to expedite matters, we would cut it out. And then that was gone. I mean, I was frustrated, and I was kind of you know, disappointed that it couldn't be in the movie. But there's a lot of things I was disappointed about in that movie, and I wasn't real happy with it when it came out, and never felt it really got finished. So, and I never expected to be able to fix it. That's the normal way of making movies. I mean, almost any filmmaker can go back and say, gee, if I only had another few days, some more money, I could really fix a lot of those things that slipped by that I'd give anything to fix at this point. And, you know, I was fortunate enough when this opportunity came up to what we were going to do for the 20th anniversary. You know, is it going to be a convention? Should we reissue the films and everything? And the idea of reissuing the films took hold. That's when I said, this is my chance. This is my chance to fix all those things. So I took it, and I'm very happy with it.
How happy?
Happy.
Okay. We'll be back.
Special effects don't make a movie. You know, the story makes the movie. And all the special effects do is allow you to tell a particular story. So in the original Jedi, I wanted to do a musical number. The state of the art at that point was that I could just barely get maybe 15 or 20 seconds out of it with a puppet that sort of moved around a little bit. That was all I could do. That was, if I wanted to do a big musical number, it wasn't possible at that time. There was, you know, we could have gone in and done some stop motion stuff, but the stop motion at that point was not really up to the level that I had wanted to do this sequence, you know, in terms of expression, because it was mostly faces and singing and stuff. And And we toyed with it, and then, again, ran out of time and money and just said, well, okay, 15 seconds of a musical number is fine there, let's get on with it. But I'd always wanted to put it back. And new technology allows you to go one step further and make it what you originally envisioned it to be. So as a filmmaker, it's not like writing a book where you can use words to create an imaginary world in the reader's mind. Film is very literal. You actually, there's a certain kinetic reality that works that can fool the audience, but at the same time, you're stuck with a very literal interpretation of what's going on. You have to create something to photograph that fools the audience into thinking they're creating an imaginary world that allows them to function in this make-believe environment. Doing it with words is much easier. You don't actually have to construct the things. Mythology in general is used to convey certain social values, certain social precepts from one generation to another generation, and to hand it down. In the beginning, obviously, it was an oral tradition, and it was really designed to give the community itself a cohesive set of sort of thinking modules that allowed them to be a society. And then these were told in story form because that was the best way to teach it. When I got into college and I studied anthropology and I sort of got into this stuff, I realized, and one of my instructors said, the Western was the last of the American mythology and really probably one of the last of the world mythologies that had been developed. And then in the 60s, that all fell apart, and Western sort of, went by the wayside, especially in the film business, not necessarily in the literary field. But as a popular myth transport, we were sitting there with, nothing specifically mythic. And one of the reasons that I started doing the film was I was interested in creating a new kind of myth and using space to do it because that's the new frontier. Well, the issue is that it was always meant that Greedo fired first. And in the original film, you don't get that too well. And then there was a discussion about, well, it's good that it's left amorphous and everything, but I basically, in terms of Han's character and everything, I didn't like the fact that when he was introduced, the first thing he did is just gun somebody down in cold blood. That wasn't what was meant to be there. And the other issue, and again, it's a perception issue, when you're doing something like this, we had 3 different versions of that shot. And one he fires very close to when Han fires, and one was 3 frames later, one was 3 frames later. And we sort of looked at it and tried to figure out which one would be perceivable, but wouldn't, wouldn't look corny. And it's very hard to do that because, obviously if you know the film real well and you're looking for that, you see it. If you don't know the film very well and you're just watching the movie, it almost goes right by you. You don't even, it's just there's a lot of things going on. People don't perceive what's happened there, even now. So it's trying to find that medium ground, and it's always this way in film, of what can the majority of the audience perceive and what can't they perceive. And one of the things that I do and I like, but that accusations have been made about, is I like fast-paced movies and I like things to go by in a very almost surreal way. And so, I'm caught between doing things that work for me with, really understanding and seeing something and understanding what's going on, and the audience, which I know is looking at something for the first time and things go by in a very different way. And so there's always this conflict about where you draw the line. And perhaps I should have done it 2 frames sooner. Star Wars, we had this kind of low-budget, young director and all this kind of problems that we had to cope with, which made the film less than what it could be. With Kirshner and Empire, it was a much better situation, and we had a lot more resources, and Kirsh's a great director, so we didn't really have to change too much. Most of what we changed, one were some things like Cloud City, which Kirsh was complaining on the set, and I was saying, look, they're just not going to let us have any more set because it's cost too much, and the idea of putting in digital backgrounds, that didn't exist then. You wouldn't even think about doing something like that. So a lot of the same thing with a snow monster. We tried to have a snow monster. We built a snow monster. It just looked terrible, and it was Kirsh and said, we can't let this stay in here. I said, you're right, it's terrible. So we cut it out. We had somebody else do another little tiny puppet that we used just marginally to give you the impression of a monster. But we all wanted to have that monster in there. And a lot of these things are things you want on the set that you have to make compromises for. And you say, now we're going to do it the way we wanted to do it then. And again, it's part of it's an economic opportunity. Somebody's willing to put up some money, and we can, whenever for a filmmaker, you're restricted by your resources. They give you X amount of dollars. I know this doesn't always happen here, but they give you X amount of dollars, and you pretty much have to live with it. And if you sort of say, well, I got so many days, and they're going to cut me off, and I got so much stuff, and you have to sort of make it work within reason. I know a lot of the times the stories come out that it's very different, that people just spend resources like there's no restrictions, but in 99% of the cases there are very severe restrictions. And that was the original intention. And I was pretty determined to get those 3 movies finished. After the first film came out and suddenly it was a giant hit, which was a big story, I said, oh, I get to do these 2 movies. And everybody said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, gee, I can do these backstories too. And that would be interesting to be able to make it. And that's where the sort of starting at episode 4 came, because I said, well, gee, maybe I'll do the other 3, I can make 3 out of this backstory. And then, so that evolved right around the time the film was released, after I knew it was a success. And then everybody started saying, well, you're going to do sequels. And I said, gosh, sequels. Well, I guess I could do sequels. I could do 3, of what happens later on. But that was really an afterthought. I don't have scripts. I don't have any story. The only notion on that one is wouldn't it be fun to get all the actors to come back when they're like 60 and 70 years old and make 3 more that are about them as old people. And so that's about as far as that one's gone so far. These, obviously, the first 6 will get finished and will be the film. And then whether I go into a sequel to this is, because I'll also be 70 soon. I'm not sure whether that's going to happen.